Well, Antibureaucratic Revolution was essentially a series of popular protests that unfolded in second half of the 1988 and first 3 months of 1989, in which all kinds of groups participated. Some groups with nationalist causes, such as Kosovo Serbs, and then later on there was a reaction of Kosovo Albanians. There were industrial workers pursuing socioeconomic causes, various local groups with their local problems and the rest. What was interesting was that for the first time, in the 80s, there was a series of groups openly protesting on the streets, often in large demonstrations against political establishment, and that was the novelty. And it happened before these events in other East European states. These events had such an impact simply because the communist establishment was already crumbling, so there was kind of a window of opportunity for these groups to go out, press their demands, and kind of weakening establishment couldn't do anything else but actually accept many of these. So this kind of first part of anti-bureaucratic revolution was bottom-up to a large extent. What happened later on, there were elite divisions, especially between different republics. So some communist leaders actually adopted some of the demands of these groups in order to become popular, of course, and co-opted some of these guys from protest groups and suddenly became popular at the time when everybody else was actually highly unpopular. So that's the way Milošević actually consolidated his power and was able to push for different causes towards the end of the 1980s, some nationalists, some others, at a time again when most East communist leaders and those communist leaders from other Yugoslav republics were actually trying to find a way out. So that's what gave Milošević power to actually do all kinds of things later on, because he did have a solid popular base. The influence was more indirect than direct because there were all kinds of groups involved which had little in common in terms of demands. What was a common thing was actually the target, which was the political establishment, which they saw as the main culprit for all their problems. There was no self-conscious attempt to, destroy Yugoslavia or anything else. Some groups were simply not interested in these sort of issues, but overall, even those who were, they wanted to kind of refashion Yugoslavia to be stronger than it used to be, politically and socioeconomically. The thing was, Yugoslavia was already highly unstable internally because of highly decentralized institutional framework, because of very complex multinational setting and the history of ethnic conflict between different groups. So it didn't take much actually to destabilize this very complex structure, regardless of the fact whether it was deliberate or not. Had it happened, let's say, a decade earlier, probably the impact wouldn't have been significant in terms of, the endurance of Yugoslavia. But it happened at the time when the Cold War was ending, at the time when nobody really cared about Yugoslavia anymore, unlike in the previous period. So all these kind of international factors and internal kind of instability made it possible that such an event or serious event such as anti-bureaucratic revolution kind of destabilize Yugoslavia. So the impact was more indirect than direct one.